Hi, Denny again. This is the second part of our introduction to birth order. Or, if you want, it's the study of everything. Take your time. That could take us a while, but we'll start with this. We talk about these 6 different sisters. These are also 6 feminine qualities within myself. The red ones all relate to primary patterns related to the father's family. Number 1, number 3, number 5. These 3 sisters, they are composed of attributes from the father's family, and they're also directly related to things inside my body. But we won't do so much about the interior of the body for now. What we'll do mostly is just to help you understand how these are related to family patterns. So the number 1, the number 3, the number 5, these are all the ones in red. They're linked to the father's family. What does that mean? Generally, it means when given the natural tendency, they gravitate toward the father. Number 1 girl generally looks at her mother and says, anything you can do, I can do better. That number 1 girl usually has a strong mind, a strong will, a strong determination. She likes to talk more, and she focuses on her relationship to her father. Now, I'm not going to give you all the attributes of number 1 girl. Those are pretty well established in the book called, The Nature of Birth Order, if you want to go find that one. And eventually, all of the data about number 1 girl will be available for free on the website, and we'll have different forms of data for different ages. For example, how do you really relate to a number 1 girl when she's under 4? How do you relate to a number 1 girl when she's between 4 and 8, and so on and so on? How do you relate to a number 1 girl if, well, you're married to one? How do you relate to that? How do you understand them? What do they really need? What do they respond to? How does she learn? How does she go into the world with an activity or career? What would be a likely mannerism of her natural skills that a number 1 girl would have? How can we guide our children? This is why we do this. So we can go to number 1 son, and he's just an opposite to number 1 girl. That's why the principles of first, middle, and last, by the way, it quite frankly doesn't work. It's not really true, regardless of what anyone would tell you. The number 1 son comes first is not like the number 1 girl first child that comes first. They're just completely different. Test it for yourself. We're saying that the number 1 girl is more earth-oriented, grounded, and practical. Also likes to control and talk more. That's easy to find out. The number 1 son, by the way, usually relates to mother's side of the family. He has a completely different dynamics. He's not like his father. He has a principle called he's the opposite to his father, wants to be his father's teacher, not his father's son. So there's a whole different series of documents about how to raise a number 1 son and a number 1 girl. So be patient with me. This is just the description of how this works. Now, if you look at this, there are 3 blue triangles, and these relate to the blue side of the family. The one to the right is the mother's family. The one to your left is the father's family. And these are the, if you will, more feminine attributes. So the blue ones are primarily more feminine. What does that mean? Softer, smoother, creative in some way, imaginative in some way, more reclusive in some way, talk less in some way. So by being able to look at the composite patterns, we began to learn how the number 1 son relates so well to his mother. Number 1 sons, well, any mother that has a number 1 son generally knows how much that little boy has opened her heart, and her own relationship to her father becomes in question. Now, this is what happens. Every one of these birth order positions, it has a likely body type, it has a characteristic mannerisms about how it uses the mind or words or imagination, how they move into the world, where they're very active or they have a tendency to be passive. Everyone is here. But now, what happens is, each one of these patterns is altered by the dynamics of the family. For example, if you take the father out of the equation because the father passes away or there is a divorce or something, what happens is the child's ability to be able to access these attributes within themselves, especially those who are from the red or the father side of the family, it changes them. It can change the contour of their body. It can change their personality. The loss of a father or a mother has a dramatic effect upon the child's ability to be able to know itself and to feel its attributes and so on. This is what happens when we have difficulties in the family. This is what happens when we bring other people. What happens if you have a cousin or a grandmother, grandfather that lives with you. There's adoption. There's all these different patterns. We'll talk about the genetic pattern, which is primarily, which child conceived by the father is this. We talk about gender number, like which boy is this? This is the third son behind two girls. And yes, I'll be able to guide you through the mechanics about how to be able to go, it's boy, girl. What's the fourth child like? That would be pretty fun, wouldn't it? To be able to take 6 children of any combination and to be able to distinguish their individual characteristics. After a period of time, you'll find that it's actually not only easy, well, I think it's easy, but it's beautiful to be able to see these individual characteristics because it sharpens our appreciation of the individuality of each child and how we might relate to them in such a beautiful way as to encourage their natural attributes to be more known or felt or realized or guided. That's why it's so much fun. I'll give you all the mechanics about number 1 son, number 1 girl. I'll show you how it works. Boy 1 that comes behind a girl, boy 1 that comes behind 2 girls, 3 girls, 4 girls. What happens when you have a number 1 son who loses a father? What happens when you have a number 1 son whose father is a number 1 son? How does this change? What happens when you have a number 1 son who has no relationship to her own father? How does that affect that boy? How does it affect his breathing? Because this position, you'll find out, has a lot to do with the lungs. Yes, all of the body systems, all the glands and organs are up here. So if we have children in a particular birth order pattern who have specific symptoms like coughing or nightmares or asthma or panic, nervous tremors, convulsions, ultimately we're going to be able to have some idea where it might be coming from. Now this part's not easy at times because we have to look at the symptoms in each one of these children as it relates to how did the mother feel about her mother. This could be a challenge. How does the relationship of the grandmother to her own mother affect the dynamics of the children? So there is no easy way to say, look, this is a vast mathematical model of which we can take months, years perhaps, more than that, decades upon decades, to be able to see how it works. But inside of this is the wonderful opportunity to really begin to know yourself, your family, your friends. After a while, you'll look around and you'll see symbols in nature like trees, clouds, or mountains, and you'll actually recognize patterns. You'll see birds and fish and reptiles, and you'll see foxes and turtles. I mean, every symbol in nature corresponds to one of these. That's why I like it. It's a little bit about everything. So this is the second part of the introduction to birth order, or the study of everything. Thanks for coming.